So other than Chase Ultimate Rewards, AMEX membership rewards points are probably the most valuable credit card currency that's available today. Now, if you've been around for a while, you might know that AMEX membership rewards points are best used for maximum value when you transfer them to travel partners. What I want to do today is break down the distance bands for domestic flights and the best ways you can utilize your AMEX membership rewards points to book flights within the United States. So like with Capital One, AMEX does not have a partnership with every single domestic airline. The only two AMEX travel reward partners that are actually located in the United States are Delta and JetBlue. Now, in order to actually book flights with the other airlines in the United States, what you need to do is utilize airline alliances. Now, between SkyTeam, Oneworld, and the Star Alliance, you have a multitude of different options that you can transfer your AMEX membership rewards points over to those programs to then book them on airlines that are headquartered here in the US. So here I've put together a quick cheat sheet of the different airline partners of American Express and the different transfer ratios for those airlines that you can then book domestic flights on. The way to read this is simply that you have the partner of American Express here on the left, and then of course the transfer ratio, most of these being 1-to-1 of AMEX points over to that transfer partner's currency that you can then utilize to book that domestic airline, whether it's Delta, United, American, Alaska, or anything else. Now, when I was planning out this video and doing the research on the different transfer partners of AMEX, I was originally going to do this by distance bands in terms of 0 to 500 miles and then give you guys some options for the transfer partners there, and then 500 to 1500 and then 1500 and above. Now, technically that would make sense because most of these transfer partners of AMEX are going to have distance bands in terms of standard award rates, which means that within a certain distance of your departure airport, it's going to cost the same no matter where you travel, as long as it's within that certain distance. Now, the problem is that the best prices available are not necessarily based off of that specific transfer partner. And so the way I'm gonna break down this video is that between 500 to 650 miles or under, I'm gonna give you guys some transfer partner options for that distance band, which for the purposes of this video, we're just gonna consider short haul domestic flights. And then for the second part of the video, we're gonna focus on longer haul domestic flights, which are gonna be give or take more than 600 to 700 miles for that flight one way. Simply put, there isn't necessarily going to be one airline that's going to be your best option for a transfer for every particular distance band, whether it's 400 miles, 500, 600, or whatever the case might be. I also know that for most of you guys out there, when you're looking for flights, you're not necessarily just looking for a particular airline or only willing to use a certain airline's currency. Now, that being said, in this video, we're going to cover 5 different transfer partner options for both short haul domestic flights and long haul domestic flights to utilize your AMEX points for maximum value when traveling within the United States. These options are going to include booking Delta through Delta Sky Miles, United on Avianca Life Miles, Alaska on British Airways Avios points, and then for those longer haul domestic flights, American on Cathay Pacific Asia Miles, and United/Alaska on Singapore KrisFly Miles. Now, for our first option here for flights under give or take 500 to 600 miles, we're going to be looking at booking Delta flights utilizing Delta Sky Miles on Delta's actual website. This is the one rare use case where actually booking an airline's actual flights with their currency is going to give you pretty good value. If we take a look at this flight from Seattle to San Diego on January 13th, we'll see that it's 3,400 Sky Miles plus $6 for this award ticket redemption. Now, I do want to point out that this 15% card member savings is something that you're going to get if you have a Delta Sky Miles co-branded card with American Express. And so if you don't, you'll see this price listed here, which is the 4,000 miles plus $6 for this flight, which is still pretty good value. Now, if we go back to our list of transfer partners, if we remember that Delta Sky Miles and most of these options are a 1-to-1 transfer ratio. Now, at a simple 1 cent per point valuation, 3,400 Sky Miles plus $6 makes this flight only $40 from Seattle to San Diego. I think it's safe to say that that's pretty insane value, and especially considering that Delta has dynamic pricing, this is the type of value that you can get if you book your flights far enough in advance. Now, once again, dynamic pricing simply means that the supply and demand of that particular flight destination on that particular date dictates the price of the flight, whether it's in points or miles or in cash. If we do a quick cross-reference to AMEX Travel, we'll see that this flight, if you had booked it in cash on AMEX Travel, would be about $100 for this best option here. Now, in the real world use case, if we wanted to book this flight on Delta's website utilizing Sky Miles, what we would want to do is go to AMEX's website and then transfer over our AMEX membership rewards points over to Delta Sky Miles. And once again, the one little caveat there is that there is a small excise fee that you have to pay for transferring them to an airline that's actually headquartered here in the United States that you otherwise wouldn't have to pay if you booked those miles over to an international carrier. Now, our next best option for short haul domestic flights, I would say, is booking United flights on Avianca Life Miles. For this particular use case, we're going to look at a flight from Chicago to Washington, D.C., which is going to cost us 7,500 life miles plus $5.60. Now, generally speaking, life miles has pretty good value for flights that are under 650 miles within the United States. Now, the simple valuation for this is that 7,500 life miles at a 1 cent per point value transferred over from Amex membership rewards points is $75 plus $5.60. Looking at this same flight on the same dates, we'll see that it is better value on life miles versus booked in cash, whether it's on Google or on Amex Travel's actual website. Now, with United and booking this flight through Life Miles, I will point out that United has standard award pricing, which means that this flight will not fluctuate based off of the date that you're traveling and the particular destination. As long as it's within the distance band of 650 miles, it will be 7,500 life miles for that distance band. Now, for our last domestic flight transfer option in terms of short-haul domestic flights, we're going to be talking about Alaska Airlines. Now, if you look at this flight from Seattle to Denver, which is indeed a short-haul service, we'll see that it's 9,000 Avios points plus $5.60. You want to keep in mind that in terms of airline alliances, Alaska Airlines is part of Oneworld, and so you can see options here in terms of Alaska or American Airlines, depending on the date that you're traveling. Now, once again, the simple valuation of that 9,000 Avios points transferred over from AMEX Travel is going to be $90 plus $5.60 for this particular flight service. If we do a quick reference on AMEX Travel like before, we'll see that this option booked through points is indeed going to be cheaper than actually booking it through cash on AMEX Travel. Now, for the next set of options in terms of domestic flights, I want to talk about long-haul domestic flights, which are more coast-to-coast or anything over 500 miles. Now, the first option here is going to be booking an Alaska flight using Cathay Pacific Asia Miles, which we'll see is 10,000 Asia Miles for this flight from JFK to LAX. And once again, if we consider that we're transferring our Amex membership rewards points over to Cathay Pacific Asia Miles at a 1-to-1 transfer ratio, this is exactly $100 for this flight service from JFK to LAX. I would say in terms of longer haul flights from coast to coast, Cathay Pacific can be a great option, especially for booking those Alaska services or American services with the Oneworld Alliance. And once again, Cathay Pacific has that standard award pricing, which means that no matter where you're traveling, as long as it's within that distance band, it's going to be 10,000 miles. I will also say that generally speaking, if you find value in longer distance flights within the United States, you're going to get a bigger margin between the actual cash price and what you're paying in points or miles. If we look here on Amex Travel, it's a lot more expensive to book this flight in cash versus actually traveling on that Alaska flight for just $100 booked through Cathay Pacific. Now, the second option for booking those longer haul domestic flights with your Amex membership rewards points is going to be booking United or Alaska flights on Singapore KrisFlyer miles. If we look at this flight from LAX to EWR, we'll see that it's 14,000 KrisFlyer miles, which at a 1-to-1 transfer ratio is $140 plus the fee to book this flight through KrisFlyer miles. I do want to also mention that if you don't want to deal with having to think about the destination that you're traveling to within the United States in terms of the distance span and how much it's going to cost, Singapore KrisFlyer miles for award pricing is going to be $140 or this 14,000 miles for wherever you're going to travel within the United States. Now, of course, there's plenty of other options that you have to utilize your Amex points to book flights within the United States, but these are just some of the heavy hitters in terms of where you can get pretty good value with those Amex membership rewards points to transfer them over for a higher than a 1 cent per point valuation by booking domestic flights on those transfer partners. If you guys have any better ideas or anything better that you've come across, feel free to drop it in the comment section below so you can share that knowledge with everybody else. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.